choosing the right journal can make or break your publishing journey. It's one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make as a researcher because where you publish can shape your reputation, your readership, and even your career opportunities. This week, we're diving deep into the world of journals, how to find them, evaluate them, and pick the ones that align perfectly with your research goals. With tens of thousands of academic journals out there, it can feel overwhelming. But once you understand how this landscape works, publishing success becomes less about luck or more about strategy. As initially discussed, this course was designed for a 12-week program, but is delivered only in 5 weeks. So today we will do week 4, 5, 6, and 7, or 4 weeks, uh, but simply labeled as week 3A, B, C, and D. So here's what your week looks like. Day 1 is understanding the journal landscape, and you'll explore different journal types, learn what makes each suitable, and start defining your publishing goals. Day 2 is searching for journals. You'll use multiple search strategies to build a list of 10 to 15 possible journals for your work. Day 3 and 4 is evaluating your options. You'll systematically assess those journals using a detailed evaluation framework. And day 5, you'll read sample articles, draft query letters, and choose your top 3 journals to target. This week is a serious investment. Plan for about 7 to 8 hours in total, but the payoff, huge. The knowledge and lists you create now will serve you for years, not just for this article, but for every article you publish in the future. So if you've been following along and staying on track, congratulations. You've built better work habits, clarified your arguments, and drafted an abstract. You are gaining real momentum towards publishing success. And if you've fallen a little behind, don't stress. Procrastination is normal. The key now is to pause and simply reflect. What's holding you back? What obstacles are in the way? Take an honest look and remember, thinking and reading alone won't get you published. Writing and revising will. So even if you can't dive in right now, set a start date and create reminders you'll actually see. Remember, week 3 is all about strategy, focus, and forward motion. Let's Turn journal selection from a guessing game into a smart, confident plan for your publishing success. Let's look at the surprising good news about journal publishing. Here's something most people don't realize. The world of journal publishing is huge and growing every single year. There are over 60,000 active peer-reviewed English language journals today across every discipline you can imagine. And that number grows about 3% a year, meaning it doubles roughly every 2 decades. Altogether, these journals publish about 2 million research articles each year. So here's the good news. There's room for you. There's room for each and everyone. And even better, many journals need your work more than you need them. There's a reflection of light on my face. More than you need them. Sure, you've heard about elite journals with rejection rates of 95% or higher, but those are the exemption, not the rule. In reality, most fields look very different. For example, average rejection rates are around 70% in business, 67% in education, 65% in psychology, and 54% in health. So, for most authors, the real odds are much better than you think. And that's the reason why, and that's far better, in fact, than the odds of landing most research fellowships. So some smaller humanities journal even receive a few as 6 to 20 unsolicited submissions a year. That means your well-prepared article could make a big impact. Now, why choosing the right journal matters? While the opportunities are abundant, choosing the wrong journal can cost you dearly. Even the best article won't be published if it is sent to a journal that's a wrong fit. In fact, the most common reason for rejection is simply this: it's not a fit for our journal. And because the review process takes on average 3 to 4 months, a bad match can delay your publication significantly. Significantly. So you're not just losing time while waiting, you're losing momentum. And that's something to pay attention to. And remember, let me go back to that. There is a single submission rule. Unlike popular magazines, academic journals expect exclusivity. You can only submit your article to one journal at a time. Submitting to multiple journals simultaneously is considered unethical and could even get you banned from future submissions. So your choice isn't just strategic, it's actually very critical. Not all journals are created equal. What do we mean by that? In academia, not all journals are treated equally. Research universities and even many colleges only reward articles published in refereed or peer-reviewed journals. Understanding which journals count for your career and which don't is essential if you want your work to move you forward. Academic journals have a rather fascinating history. They trace back to the 1660s when scholars began sharing handwritten letters summarizing discoveries with each other. Out of that correspondence came the first serial publications like Journal des Savants in France and Philosophical Transactions in England. Over time, journals evolved. By the late 1700s, they specialized by discipline. By the 1800s, peer-reviewed and research standards became the norm. And today, they're living conversations, vibrant records of what scholars around the world are thinking, testing, and debating. When you publish in a journal, you're not just broadcasting your ideas, you're joining an ongoing scholarly conversation. And that's very important. Publishing outlets to avoid. Now, let's talk about where not to publish, especially if you're aiming at an academic position. First up, newspapers and magazines. They're great for public outreach, but they don't count towards academic credit. Yes, publishing in the New Yorker, Philippine Daily Inquirer, or Wall Street Journal is impressive, but hiring and promotion committees, especially at research institutions and universities, generally don't count those towards tenure. Why? Because journalists often lack field credentials. Articles are short and simplified, and commercial influence raises questions about their impartiality. In the academia, they simply don't carry the same weight. Next, there are three more outlets to avoid. One, news and information journals like the Chronicle on higher education or the Scientific American, it's great for insights but not peer reviewed. You're also supposed to skip trade and even professional journals, which is focused on practical how-to pieces for practitioners, not the field for academic research. Lastly, you are to avoid predatory journals. These are the worst offenders. They charge fees, skip peer review, and sometimes fake legitimacy. So if a journal promises fast publication or has grammatical errors or hides its fees, that's a red flag. Always check sites like predatory-journals.com before submitting, or Cabell's list of phishing journals. That's also what it's called, phishing, PHISING. Print-only journals, a dying breed to avoid. If a journal is print-only, skip it. Skip it. In the digital age, journals that never appear online simply don't get read. Studies show that 90% of scientific journals are now available digitally. And publishing in print-only outlets can cut your potential readership and citations. Actually, how much? By half. So here's your rule of thumb. Only submit to journals that publish both in print and online. Yes, both is ideal. That's how you make sure scholars can find and cite your work. Debatable publishing outlets. Proceed with caution. Some journals aren't flat out wrong choices, but they come with caveats. Let's call them debatable outlets. They might make sense later in your career, but early on, thread carefully. So, working paper series and e-print repositories. These are common in social sciences and natural sciences, where researchers share early drafts to establish precedents. They'll, they are useful for feedback, but many journals see them as prior publication, which can make your article ineligible later. Another one is conference proceedings. It's flattering to be invited to publish in conference volumes, but beware, many never get published. And even when they do, they are rarely read. Invest your energy in revising that conference paper for a peer-reviewed journal instead. Let's move forward and consider edited volumes. Publishing a paper in an edited book sounds prestigious, but it's often a dead end. Fewer readers, slower timelines, and inconsistent editorial quality make them risky. As a scholar, or it's better that you do not bury your paper in a hole. There are exemptions, of course. If the editor is reputable and the volume is tied to a strong university press, it can be worthwhile. Let's consider other debatable outlets. 5 more debatable outlets. Non-peer-reviewed academic journals. Here you'll miss valuable peer feedback. Graduate student journals. Um, Here quality varies widely, and established ones can be fine though. Note journals, because they publish very short pieces and is not suitable for full-length research. Review journals, these publish literature or book reviews, are not original research. Local journals, if they're online, peer-reviewed, and fit for fit your regional topic, they can work, but assess all of these carefully. Now let's look at the fifth one, no? New journals and electronic only publications. New journals under 3 years old often fail unless they're backed by a strong institution or editor. It is safer to wait until they have proven stability. Similarly, electronic-only journals haven't yet achieved full prestige parity in some fields, though that's already improving right now. Next are open access journals. These are free for anyone to read online, though sometimes authors pay a fee, occasionally up to 250 pesos, occasionally, sometimes it's worth to 25,000 pesos just to get published in this one. Here's the good news though. Open access often boosts citations because anyone can access your work. But in humanities fields, the author pays model can feel uncomfortable, and some open access journals are predatory or sometimes they just lack rigor. So if you're early in your career and seeking prestige, think twice. If you if you're if you have funding, or if you have the funding of your institution or your institution supports it, go for it. Otherwise, consider posting your article in a university repository for free access instead. Then, there is also what we call the non-US journals. No? Uh, Here's a tricky truth. In the US, and in the US, I said, Publishing in American journals tends to count more for tenure, while international scholars often gain prestige for publishing in US journals. But don't let geography stop you. Many top journals are actually based in Europe or elsewhere. What matters most is quality. If a leading journal in your field happens to be in London or in Tübingen, go for it. Okay? Go for it. What then are our preferred publishing outlets? Now let's focus on where you should publish, your best bets, if you will. Aim for journals that are one, peer-reviewed, two, established, for at least 3 years, three, available both in print and online, and fourth, focused on a very specific field and topic even, rather than a broad discipline. These are the journals that will help you build your reputation strategically. Now, some of your strongest options can include these. Regional journals. They're less competitive, highly targeted, and they're great entry points for early career researchers. Regional journals. Next, newer journals. Those 3 to 7 years old often publish faster and offer more personalized feedback to your field. Next, interdisciplinary journals. Perfect if your work bridges fields like literature and philosophy. Just make sure your paper clearly fits both audiences. Next, field journals. Okay? Field journals by region, by period, by ethnicity, by theory, by methodology, and by author. Your primary target is this type of journal. These are prestigious, respected, and specific enough to give your work a strong home because it's very specific. Lastly, themed and special issues. These can drastically improve your chances of getting published. Competition drops by about 2/3 when you publish in one. In short, what am I saying? No? In short, I'm saying pick journals that are alive, active, and aligned with your goals. Don't chase prestige for its own sake. Instead, focus on fit, focus on strategy, focus on sustainability. Because Smart journal selection isn't simply about getting published. It's about building a career that lasts. Now, how do we find suitable journals? Okay, so disciplinary journals, and then the myth of starting from the top. Let's start here. Disciplinary journals. Uh, what do we mean by disciplinary journals? All right, let's talk about disciplinary journals. That's where we ended last time, no? Uh, these are the giants, the top tier journals that publish works spanning an entire discipline rather than a single field. Think names like PMLA or American Anthropologists or Journal of Politics or American Economic Review. They're the heavyweights of academic publishing. But here's the honest truth. The top journals are not for most of us. They're just not for most of us. Why? Uh, the number of scholars in any discipline is massive and way larger than the number of articles those journals can ever publish. So the competition, it's fierce. To give your perspective, PMLA once received almost 300 submissions and just published 21. That's a 7% acceptance rate, meaning 93% or 93 out of every 100 submissions were rejected. And it's not just about selectivity. These journals have to appeal to everyone. It's not just your subfield. That means your work has to speak to generalists who might not share your specific topic or methods. So if your research focuses on something like 19th century Caribbean literature, a disciplinary journal might find it too narrow. They prefer broad arguments that stretch across multiple eras, theories, and methods. And here's another challenge. And here's another challenge. Top journals often have a reputation for being conservative. They're slow to embrace new ideas or unconventional topics. Many junior scholars find them intimidating or even unwelcoming, especially when they're trying to publish innovative work. So, my advice, if you're early in your graduate studies or your career, don't aim for these journals right away unless an expert in your field tells you it's a good fit. You'll make faster, more strategic progress publishing in field or regional journals that are respected but accessible nevertheless. Let's look at that myth. Uh, the myth of starting at the top. Now, there's a persistent myth that says You should always start by submitting to the leading journal. If they reject you, move down to the next best, then the next. Sounds logical, right? Start to the top, work your way down. But here's the problem. If you follow that advice, you might be retired before you ever get published. With review times averaging 3 or 4 months per submission and rejection rates over 90%, that start at the top strategy can burn years of your career without a single publication to show for it. And let's be clear, the top is actually a myth. There's no survival ranking that says one journal is objectively better than another for every article. What matters most is fit. Is fit. Okay? Uh, and interestingly, studies show that selectivity doesn't equal quality. Highly selective journals don't necessarily publish better research or even more cited articles. In fact, over half of the most cited papers in the humanities and social sciences were published in non elite journals. And thanks to Google Scholar, the playing field has leveled. Researchers can find and cite good works no matter where it's published. Prestige matters less than it used to. Relevance and discoverability matter so much more. So, what's the best strategy, you'd ask? Middle ranked journals. So, what's the smart move? Aim for middle ranked peer reviewed journals. They're respected, widely read, and realistic options for strong research. Publishing in one of these journals will look great on your CV. And most importantly, it gets your ideas into circulation sooner. If, after careful research, you find that your work genuinely fits a top tier journal, go for it. But do it because your article belongs there, not because someone said you should. At the same time, be mindful not to aim too low. Sometimes scholars, especially first generation students, or women, or non native English speakers, or scholars of ethnicity or color, underestimate themselves. Don't do that. Your work deserves to be in a solid, respected journal. Once you've done your research, you'll probably have a short list of 3 to 10 journals that make sense for you. That's your target zone. From there, the next step is evaluating them carefully, making sure each one aligns with your goals, your articles, and your audience. Because remember, you should never submit to a journal you haven't read or examined carefully. And coming up next, we'll dig into how to evaluate those journals, what makes one strong, stable, and respected, and what makes another risky. It's all about making informed choices that will build your reputation, not just for one paper, but for your whole career. Let's look at finding suitable journals. All right. Now that you know where not to waste your time and what types of journals to focus on, let's get practical. It's time to go hunting for the journals that are truly right for your work. With over 60,000 journals out there, you need a plan. You'll want to use multiple strategies to uncover the best possibilities and build a list of at least 10 to 15 journals to choose from. And here's a quick tip before we dive in. When you search, change your keywords often. Don't just search for your specific topic. Search your broader subject area, your theoretical approach, your method, and even your discipline. Each combination can reveal a new set of potential homes for your article. Let's look at strategy one. Ask your network. Start with the people around you. Sometimes the best information isn't online. Sometimes it's actually in someone else's inbox or office. Ask your advisor, your professor, your dissertation or thesis panel, your colleagues, or ask that scholar you met at a conference. What do you consider the best journals in our discipline and in your field? The one question can give you a fast sense of the publishing landscape. But a word of caution, people's experience vary. If you haven't published in years, or if they haven't published in years, or if they only publish in one journal, take their advice as one data point, not as a gospel. Always do your own follow-up research. Don't simply rely on what they say. Second strategy, major databases. Next, dive into the databases. Two are absolutely essential. One, Ulrich's Global Serials Directory. This is the world's biggest, most detailed list of academic periodicals. It tells you which journals are peer-reviewed, their publication frequency, editorial contact info, and even whether they're still active or not. You can also check the MLA directory of periodicals. This is this one is gold, especially for the humanities. It lists over 6,000 journals with details like submission guidelines, word limits, circulation numbers, and even estimated time to publication. You'll need institutional access for Ulrichs, but your university library likely has it. Search strategy number 3. Online lists and databases. Now let's branch out. Start with Wikipedia. And seriously, you've heard me say start with the Wikipedia. Its list of academic journals, which you can check by discipline. And it can help you find publications name fast. Then visit the Council of Editors of Learned Journals, or CELJ.org, which links to over 100 reputable humanities journals. For the sciences, Genomics, Journal Seek, and PubMed are great resources. And don't forget the big multidisciplinary databases, JSTOR, Project Muse, Taylor and Francis Online, and Web of Science. You can even browse your library's journal category in its catalog to uncover hidden gems. Let's look at the fourth strategy. Your own research. Here's a strategy most people overlook. Use your own references as clues. Look at the articles you've cited in the work. Where were they published? Chances are the same journals could be perfect for your own article. Then think those papers in Google Scholar and click cited by. That will show you where related research has appeared since. This helps you track the conversation your article is joining. And if you admire a certain scholar's career, check their CV. Where do they publish? That's a great shortcut to high quality. To high quality, reputable journals that take your kind of work seriously. Strategy 5. Search the library. Search the library. Here's a hand-on trick. Go analog for an afternoon. Head to your library's periodical section. Find one journal that seems relevant and then look at what's shelved around it. You'll instantly get a feel for tone, layout, and focus. And because your library subscribes to those journals, you can trust they're respected and active in an old school approach, but surprisingly powerful. Search strategy 6. Publisher websites. Don't forget to go straight to the source. Big publishing houses. Publishers like Springer, Elsevier, Wiley Blackwell, Taylor and Francis, Sage, Oxford, Cambridge University Press have directories organized by field. Nearly all their journals are peer-reviewed and even professionally managed. Many of these publishers now offer journal suggester tools. You upload your abstract and keywords, and the system recommends suitable journals in their catalog. It's like matchmaking for your article. You can also sign up for table of contents alerts to stay on top of what's being published in your field. That's very important too. Lastly, search strategy 7. Finally, there are peer-to-peer review sites that give insider info on journal experiences, like Humanities Journal Wiki, or journal reviews at Princeton. These crowd insights can tell you how responsive editors are, how constructive peer reviews tend to be, and how long it takes to get decisions. You can also use Google Scholar creatively. Search for articles similar to yours by topic, by theory, or by method, and note where they were published in the last few years. That will point you straight to journals already open to your type of work. Two search examples. Learning by doing. Let's look at two real students who put this into practice. First example is finding the right film journal. This is a grad student studying Congolese film who couldn't find any journals when she searched Congo cinema. So she tweaked her search to African cinema and suddenly found Journal of African Cinema and Research in African Literatures. Then, narrowing by language, she found International Journal of Francophone Studies, a perfect fit for her French department background. That one little change, African instead of Africa, can make all the difference. Second, a philosophy student researching biosemiotics has trouble too. And after experimenting with terms, he found Social Epistemology, a journal focused on the social production of knowledge. It wasn't what he originally had in mind, but it turned out to be exactly right. What's the moral of the story? If you haven't found a journal, you just haven't searched wide enough yet. Keep going. They're out there. Look for it. Evaluating journals. Once you've got your list of journals, it's time for the next phase. What's the next phase? Evaluation. This is where you shift from searching to strategizing. Never, and I mean never, send your article to a journal you haven't read or researched thoroughly. That's where Belcher's journal evaluation form will come in. It's a step by step framework that helps you assess each journal's credibility, accessibility, and overall health. You'll ask things like, is it peer reviewed? How stable is it? Who publishes in it? Is it timely, diverse, and well run? And that's something you have to pay attention to, those things, right? So be careful, okay? Uh, yes, it takes time, maybe a few hours per journal if you'll study the journal, but it's absolutely just worth it. Because by the end, you'll have not just one submission target, but a clear hierarchy of good options. And that means if your first choice says no, you already know exactly where to send it next. No lost momentum, no wasted effort. At some point, someone's going to ask, what's the impact factor of that journal? And if you're new to publishing, the question can feel like an exam you didn't study for. So let me demystify that a bit. So, journal ranking and metrics sound complicated. But once you understand what they actually measure, then they stop feeling scary. Think of them as one set of clues, not commandments, and how visible a journal is. Impact factor. First up, the most famous and most controversial impact factor, or IF there. Developed by Eugene Garfield in 1960, the impact factor was designed to measure how often the average article in a journal gets cited in a given field. It is calculated using a 2-year window. So impact factor is equivalent to citations in year X, to articles published in year X to 1 and X minus 2, divided by the total number of articles published in those 2 years. Sounds simple, right? But here's the catch. It's not a measure of quality. It's a measure of popularity. So a journal with a high impact factor might publish trendy or review heavy topics that attract lots of citations, but not necessarily groundbreaking research. And to make things even more skewed, journals that publish more articles, like review journals, naturally rank up naturally rank up, uh, more citations, pushing their IFs even higher. So yes, the number looks impressive, but don't be fooled. Impact factor tells you how often people cite the journal, not how good the research inside it is. Next, the Shimago Journal rank. Next is the SJR, or the Shimago Journal rank. This one is a little smarter. Instead of just counting how many times an article is cited, SJR also looks at who is citing it. A citation from a top tier journal carries more weight than one from a lesser known publication. Think like this: getting quoted in Nature counts more than getting quoted in a student newsletter. SJR also uses a broader 3-year window and covers thousands of journals across science, technology, medicine, and the social sciences. It's updated annually and freely available at shimagojr.com, which makes it a handy and transparent tool for evaluating journals. Next one is SiteScore and GSM, or Google Scholar Metrics. This one, so SiteScore is created by Elsevier, and it works a lot like Impact Factor, but uses a 4-year window instead of just 2. Because of that, it tends to be a little more stable and less sensitive to outliers. So, and finally, as I've said, the Google Scholar metrics. This one's simple, free, and covers a much more wider range of journals, including many humanities titles that don't appear in SJR or impact factor lists. If if this one uses the H index, which measures how many of a journal's article or of a journal's articles have been cited at least H times. For example, a journal with an H index of 30 has published 30 articles that each received at least 30 citations. Is it perfect? No. But it's incredibly useful, especially if you're working in a field where traditional ranking systems overlook your journals entirely. The problem with metrics. Now, before you start judging journals by numbers, here's an honest truth. Every single ranking system is flawed. They all have biases, They all favor certain disciplines, languages, and regions, usually English language STEM fields, and they're all easier to manipulate than most people realize. For instance, editors can boost a journal's impact factor by encouraging self citation or publishing more review articles. And smaller niche journals, especially in the arts, humanities, or regional studies, often get unfairly undervalued because they serve smaller academic communities. So what does this mean for you? Use these metrics as one piece of information, not the deciding factor. They can tell you something about visibility, but they can't tell you whether a journal's readership, tone, or editorial philosophy actually match your work. A good fit will always matter more than a flashy number. Alternative metrics. There's also a newer approach called altmetrics. Instead of just counting citations, altmetrics track online engagements. Things like how often an article is downloaded, shared on social media, blogged about, or discussed in public forums. So if your paper gets mentioned in a podcast or tweeted by a major scholar, that counts too. Altmetrics reflect real world attention and can be especially valuable for new researchers or interdisciplinary topics that take time to build traditional citations. The takeaway: traditional metrics measure academic echo. Altmetrics measure public impact. And both matter, just in different ways. Just in different ways. So, how do you actually use all these? When you're evaluating journals, don't obsess over which one has the highest number. Instead, look at patterns. If a journal appears in multiple ranking systems, SJR, GSM, SiteScore, that's a good sign of credibility and visibility. But if it doesn't show up anywhere, or if you can't find clear information about it, that's a red flag. At the end of the day, the best journal for you is the one that balances quality, fit, and audience. Numbers can guide you, but they shouldn't define you. Because publishing isn't about chasing prestige. It's about joining conversations that matter. All right. Now that you've built your journal list and learned about metrics, it's time to really evaluate your options. The goal here isn't just to find a journal that might accept your work, it's to find one that will help your article make the biggest possible impact in your field. So here are the key questions you should ask about every journal before you submit. First, is the journal peer reviewed? This is non negotiable. non-negotiable. Peer review is the gold standard. It signals quality, rigor, and credibility. If a journal doesn't clearly say it's peer reviewed, or if it hides that information, it's a big red flag. Look for statements like double blind review or refereed articles. If you don't see those, uh, move on. Move on. Second question, who publishes it? Next, ask who's behind the journal. A solid journal is usually published by a major academic press, a university department, or a recognized scholarly society. If it's self-published, run by a private company you've never heard of, or if it's open access with suspiciously high fees, take a step back. Good publishers have reputations to protect. They invest in editing, archiving, indexing, things shady publishers skip. Question number 3. How long has it been around? Longevity matters. Journals that have been publishing regularly for at least 3 years have proven stability. Newer journals can be exciting, but they also carry risk. They might fold, merge, or lose funding before your article even appears in print. So always check how long has the journal been around and how consistently does it release issues. Question number 4. Who's on the editorial board? This one tells you so much. Read through the editorial board list. Do you recognize the names? Are they respected scholars in the discipline? Is there diversity in geography, gender, and research perspective? If the board is stacked with people from one institution or one country, or if none of the names look familiar, it may be a sign the journal isn't well connected in your field. Question 5. Is it indexed and visible? You want your article to be findable. So make sure the journal is indexed in the right databases like JSTOR, uh, Scopus, Project Muse, or Web of Science. If it's not indexed anywhere, chances are your article won't show up in Google Scholar searches. And if it cannot be found, it cannot be cited. Question 6. What's the acceptance rate and timeline? Check how selective the journal is and how fast it moves. Check. If it publishes 2 issues a year with 10 articles each and it gets hundreds of submissions, the wait might be long. But if it accepts a steady number and has a good review turnaround, that's a plus. Most journals list this info on their websites, or you can ask colleagues who've published there. Question 7 to 11. What's the audience and scope? This one's big, in fact. Who are the journal's readers? Uh, if it's written for specialists in your subfield, perfect. If it's broad and aimed at an entire discipline, your work might get lost. Also, check your journal's mission statement. It usually spells out what kind of work they publish. So if your topic, theory, or region isn't mentioned there, it's probably not the right fit. Or what's the tone and the style? Flip through a few articles. Are they full of jargon or heavy theory? Or are they clear, concise, and practical? Match your writing to the tone. You can even use similar phrasing in your abstract or introduction, and it will signal to editors that your piece belongs there. So consider other things. Is it carefully produced? Does it come out on time? Does it require author fees? Or are authors varied? These are very important also. Now let's go deeper uh, and look at journal credibility. So there are more, huh? But I'd like to focus on the other questions. When you're checking a journal's credibility, you're really asking, can I trust this publication to represent my work well and be recognized by my peers? Looks for signs of professionalism like consistent formatting and copy editing, DOI numbers on every article, clear publication schedules, a functional, well-maintained website. And if you see typos, broken links, or missing contacts, just walk away. And always, real journals care about presentation because it reflects academic quality. And always check if your journal appears on BIAL's list, on Cabell's, or other predatory journal watch lists, because those exist for a reason. Finally, fit is everything. Ask yourself, do the topics they publish overlap with my article? Does my journal or methodological approach align with theirs? Would readers on this journal care about my argument? The best tell 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 sorry, uh uh is whether they match or not, no? uh if your article feels like it could have appeared in a recent issue, you found the right journal. And here's the great news: once you found one or two good fits, you're, you'll start to recognize patterns. You'll know which journals share authors, approaches, and even reviewers. That's how you build a publishing network organically, intelligently, and sustainability. Now let's jump. So so there are more to this one, huh? The editor responses and things like that. But I'd like to focus more on putting everything you've learned into practice. We've now explored how to find journals and how to evaluate them. Now, we need to break down our evaluation into four key categories: credibility, accessibility, quality, and fit. Just four. Credibility, the foundation of any good journal. Ask yourself, is it peer reviewed? Is it sponsored by a professional association or university? Is it regularly published and widely indexed? Is it listed in trusted directories like Ulrich and or MLA? And does it have a solid editorial board? If you can check most of those, that's a credible journal. If you can confirm, you proceed with caution. And remember, credibility isn't about prestige. It's about reliability. Next, accessibility. A great journal doesn't hide behind barriers. It's easy to find, easy to read, and easy to share. So here are the four things you look for. Does the journal have a clean, active website? Are full articles available online, either open access or through your library? Does it assign DOIs so your article can be tracked and cited? Is it indexed in databases like JSTOR, Scopus, or Google Scholar? The more accessible a journal is, the larger your audience will be, and the more citations you'll earn. After all, people can't cite what they can't find. So, credibility and accessibility. Next, quality. This is where you get a sense of a journal's personality. And there are four to consider also. A, are the topics, are they well written and professionally edited? Two, are the topics current, innovative, and relevant? Three, do the authors come from respected institutions? And four, is the scholarship rigorous with clear methodology and strong argumentation? Quality is also about aesthetics. Look at the layout, look at citations, look at tone. If the journal feels polished and professional, that's a good sign. If it looks like a rushed Word document, not so much. And lastly, fit. We reach the more personal and more important one when selecting a journal. Fit. A journal can be credible, accessible, and high quality, but if your article doesn't fit its focus, it's still a no. So ask yourself, does my topic align with the themes and recent publications? Do they publish work with my kind of method or theoretical approach? Would their audience understand and value my contribution? Remember, one great test is to imagine your article's title appearing in the table of contents. Would it look natural there? If yes, most probably that's a good fit to end. The real goal of this exercise isn't just to pick a journal. It's to understand your field better. Every time you analyze a journal, you're training your instincts. You're learning who's publishing what, how editors think, and where your research can make an impact. And when you finally submit, you'll know that your choice wasn't just random. It was informed, strategic, and personal. That's what sets successful scholars apart. They don't just write, they also publish smart. Have a good day, everyone.